Okay, this is Mr. Wallace, your driver education instructor, and we are going into lesson number 2, knowing your vehicle, basic operations, starting, stopping, and steering. And this is really the very beginning of our course. In lesson number 1, we talked about how we are situated as beginner drivers in the highway transportation system, and why our course brings meaning to the whole system as one of the many, many improvements over the years, and how states nowadays often, most of them have introduced a graduated driver licensing law, and somehow include driver education in that whole process. And now we're looking at what to do with your car, right? So, and moving right into it, we're going to be talking first of all about what we do before we even turn the ignition, right? So, if you get a car, a new car or a used car, one thing that you're going to want to do, and this is what your folks do, is familiarize yourself with the car. And the most meaningful way of doing that is going to the owner's manual. Nowadays, we can go right to the internet to get a PDF of the owner's manual. And the owner's manual is going to tell you all about the specifics of your car. And some of these you really do need to know. And if you don't know them, you need to reference the owner's manual. So, for example, the initial vehicle setup, especially the more electronic it is, the more computer-oriented your car is, the more there's going to be a setup process involved. Okay, how to check vehicle fluids. Okay, driving practices, like, for example, optimizing gas mileage. That's going to be in your owner's manual. There'll be a part that's about troubleshooting common problems. There'll be another part that's going to tell you what kind of solutions to use to clean your vehicle's surfaces. There'll be a part that has specifics about what type of tire size, oil type, battery type that your car is going to require. There will be a part that's going to be something like, what does this button do? Right? It's going to describe every single feature that your car offers. When I say car, I mean truck. It's interchangeable. Okay, SUV, station wagon. It's going to show you your dashboard and where to find each one of the various lights. It's going to tell you what your warranty covers. And if I can move this out of the way. And I guess that's it, what your warranty covers. Okay, so moving along, your dashboard is going to have all types of warning lights on it. And we're going to give you a brief overview of those warning lights, but we're not going to go into major depth about them, mainly because, 1, we're not mechanics. 2, a lot of the warning lights won't come on for quite a long time, and you'll forget about them well before they ever come on. So we'd rather focus your attention on more pressing matters. But let's just do a brief overview of your warning lights. Okay, so they vary from vehicle to vehicle, and this is another reason why we're not going to get into major depth. Some common warning lights and symbols are pictured on the following slides. And they're important to recognize mainly because some of them will be pertinent to the health of your car. Okay, and we'll get into this in a minute. But here are some of the pretty standard warning lights that you have on your car. Excuse me, I'm suffering from some allergies right now. And we'll get into some of these more specifically in just a second. Some of them you'll definitely need to know, but some of them just kind of help you navigate around your dashboard, right? For example, the horn symbol is going to tell you where to press the horn. Okay, this is going to be a breakout session, your warning light recognition, and we're going to want you each to join different breakout rooms, and you're going to cover one of these specific issues here. Engine temperature. How do we find this out? Oil pressure. Where do we find this and what does it mean? Okay, same with engine temperature. Battery charging light. Where do we find it? What does it look like? And what does it mean when it blinks? Brake warning light. Again, what does it look like? Where do we find it? What does it mean? And check engine light. Where do we find it? What does it look like? And what does it mean? Before you do that, or while you do that, or after you do that, we're going to look at some of these gauges that are right here on this display. Okay, some of the very important ones, the ones that are most important to you, tend to have needles, if you haven't recognized this already. So this is our temperature, engine temperature gauge right here. And our most important thing for our temperature gauge is we do not want it getting into the red, way up at the H. If it does so, we need to stop the car and let the car cool down and get it to a garage. There's something clearly wrong with the engine. Okay, it's not cooling itself down, and it should be. There could be a multitude of reasons for that, and that's for your mechanic to diagnose and tell you. Okay. When you start your car, especially in the winter, it's going to be on C, which means cold. And it's not going to get warm until after you've driven a couple miles. Okay? You need to drive the car to get it up to here. Don't let it sit idling for like 20 minutes to get it to this level. That's not healthy for your car. Over here is your RPMs. Okay? So the RPMs will tell you how fast your engine is turning. Okay? When you accelerate, you're going to see that the needle is going to go up, and you're going to hear an accompanying louder sound coming from your engine. Once it shifts to a higher gear, the needle will fall back down, and there'll be less humming from your engine. The one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to bring the needle into the red part here. That's called red lining, and that's dangerous for your engine. And that might cause it to even overheat. Another thing we want to be careful is if we are revving our engine, but we're not experiencing an increase in acceleration, there might also be something wrong with your car, and that's something you want to bring to your mechanic's attention. Okay, probably more common and maybe more importantly than your RPMs is your speedometer, right? This is called a speedometer. It tells you, as you probably can guess, your speed. Okay, it will, here in the United States, it usually will give you a kilometers per hour and a miles per hour. Now, I did not make this copy of this picture here, but we can see this is in kilometers per hour. The reason is because there's a lot of pictures on the internet that for some reason or another come from England and or from Europe and use kilometers per hour. Okay, sometimes you have a little gauge down here to tell you, like digitally, how many kilometers per hour too. This right here is your odometer, and it will be in miles. Okay, your odometer is going to tell you how many miles your car has driven in total. Okay, and it might have some other displays too, but it will definitely tell you how much in total. Over here is another very, very important gauge. This is your gas gauge, and we, as great drivers, want to always keep our needle from halfway to full, okay? If you keep it above halfway, you will always be okay. I'm going to repeat that. If you keep it above halfway, you will always be okay. This is just good practice to always refill your gas tank when it's at halfway. One thing is, it will never feel like you've spent that much money on gas. Another thing is, you will never, ever be distracted by a needle touching or getting close to E, which, especially for beginner drivers, is very, very important. Car warning lights. Okay, so here are some of the basic car warning lights. We do have an engine check light. If your engine check light is blinking, or if it turns red, or if it's blinking red, that means you must stop your car immediately. Your engine oil pressure light. If this turns on, as I've been told by mechanics, it usually means it's too late. Your engine is in trouble. Uh, but if it turns on again, just like the check engine light, you need to turn off your car, stop using it, and get it to your mechanic to resolve the issue. Okay. By the way, guys, part of car mechanic or maintenance is that every 3 to 5,000 miles, you need to get an oil change for your car. Don't lapse on this. Really be on top of it. Also, every 3,000 miles, you're supposed to have your tires rotated. Okay, if you don't rotate those tires, they are going to wear faster. All right, and they may even cause some problems with alignment. Do I change my tires every 3,000 miles? No, I do not. I change out my tires for snow tires in late September, early October, and then I switch over to all-wheel tires in the spring, right at the beginning of April. Okay, and when I do, they usually rotate the tires, and that's probably after, let's face it, probably after 12,000 miles. Okay, I go through tires pretty quickly too, and that might be one of the reasons why. Your other one that's very important is this, low tire pressure. Okay, and we will address this in a different lesson, but mainly if you have low tire pressure, the first thing you're going to do is going to go to your local Wawa gas station, go to the free air pump and pump up your tires so that they are at the correct pressure. Okay, and then we have various other symbols. This one's important. You definitely want to have your seatbelt on, and if this light's on, it means your seatbelt's not on. This one's rather important too. It means that there's something wrong with your airbag, and it needs to be looked at. Lastly, this is important. If one of your car doors is open or is not shut properly, this display will come up, and you really need to address it by pulling over to the side of the road or into a parking lot and closing the door properly. As I said, we kind of glossed over these because they're rather different for every car. Okay. One thing to remember is that we, as great drivers, are developing good driving habits, and it all starts with the maintenance of our car and being adequately prepared to drive our car on the road. Okay, and a lot goes into that. Too many things to describe right here. But for example, let's think about this one. What potential consequences could result if you, the driver, or the vehicle or the passenger, are not prepared to drive? Let's say, for example, what are the potential consequences, if you leave it to someone else to fill up the tank of gas in your car, your parents' car, and you find yourself on or close to empty? What are some potential consequences there? Or are there no consequences to that? I know from experience there are consequences to this. You're going to be driving around distracted, looking for a gas station, looking for any place you can find where you can resolve your problem. So you're not going to be paying attention to the cars in front of you. You're not going to be paying attention to the cars behind you. You're going to probably not be paying attention too much to the cars to the right or left of you, and you may even feel inclined to cut someone off to make a sharp turn into a gas station. So these can have dire consequences, as we can imagine, with accidents, maybe even possibly including an accident with a pedestrian. So that's a clear example of why it's so important to be prepared when we go out and drive. And I know all your parents are pretty well invested in you. So they're going to have things like the registration of the vehicle and the inspection all up to date. I'm sure your parents keep the car clean and in operable condition. But when we let these things lapse, and let's face it, beginner drivers often do, and beginner drivers, often don't have money to get things fixed. It has consequences. Let's continue. Okay. So we just kind of did a brief overview about what is inside the car and what's on the dashboard. And let's talk about, our first steps to the car and, how we should do this. Because really, the first part of driving is really approaching our vehicle. Okay. So I have a lot of questions for you to think about. Why should you have your keys in your hand while approaching your vehicle? Why should you be alert to other pedestrians and drivers while approaching your vehicle? Why should you look for signs of movement around your vehicle at all? Why should you make sure other drivers see you walking to and opening up your vehicle? Why should you face traffic as you approach your driver's doors when parked along the side of a curb? Okay, let's go over these. Why should you have your keys in your hand while approaching your vehicle? Well, one thing that I like is, you're ready, right? You're ready. You're kind of at that point, you're determined to use your vehicle, right? It's kind of setting the scene, setting the tone for a responsible action that you're going to do. And also, if you have some type of remote opening you might have to. I think all of us nowadays have some type of fob that is required for opening our vehicle. And often when we open our vehicle, the lights turn on, for example, and it lights things up. It brings more attention to us, maybe scares away animals, I'm not sure. But it sets the tone. Why should you be alert to other pedestrians and drivers? When we're approaching our vehicle, we definitely want to take note of all the pedestrians or potential pedestrians that are going to be in our path of travel or near our path of travel. Okay. The last thing we want to do is have an accident involving a pedestrian. Why should we look for signs of movement around our vehicle? Again, this could be a young child. It could be a pet, or it could be a wild animal. But we're looking for things that we don't want to ever have an accident with any of these, with a pet or with definitely not with a young child or a wild animal for that matter. Why should you make sure other drivers see you walking to and opening your car? Other drivers are looking around for you. Okay. They want to see you as much as you want to see them. Okay. If they see that you are walking to your car, it's not so that you can show them where they have a free parking spot. It's so they know that you sooner or later are going to be pulling out, and you're going to be in a more vulnerable or risky position, especially if you're backing out with your vehicle. It's good for them to know that you're going to be doing this. Okay. Also, if you are opening the door, this kind of goes into the next one. Why should you face traffic when you approach the driver's door? If you're facing traffic and looking down the road, if we look at this picture here down below, if we're walking out to our car against the traffic, we can see where, if their car is approaching, right? If their car is approaching, we probably do not want to open our car door until they have already cleared. Same for cyclists. We definitely don't want to open a car door and make a cyclist swerve out into traffic or make them crash into your car door. Okay. Okay. We're going to stop right here, and that will be part 1.